The baby's cry tore through the room. Not loud, not angry, just weak enough to be terrifying. Ethan Cole stood over the cradle, holding an empty bottle that had failed him again. His hands shook as if the cold had crawled into his bones, though the fire burned hot behind him. He tilted the bottle once more, foolishly hoping something might appear inside. It didn't. His daughter's lips were pale. Her tiny chest rose, then paused too long, before rising again. "No," Ethan whispered. "Please." He had faced stampedes, gunfights, and men who tried to steal his land. None of that had prepared him for this. A newborn, fading in his arms. A silence that crept closer with every breath. He bent down, brushing a finger across her cheek. She didn't turn toward the touch. That scared him more than the crying. Ethan Cole owned half the valley. Ranches, rail contracts, timber rights. Men bowed their heads when he passed. Money answered every problem he had ever thrown at it. Except this one. His wife had been buried 3 days ago. The ground still frozen. The priest's words still ringing hollow in his ears. She had died bringing this child into the world, and now the world seemed determined to take the baby too. He straightened and looked around the nursery she had planned. White curtains she never saw hung still. A rocking chair sat unused. The cradle creaked softly as his daughter moved, then cried again. Thinner this time. Ethan's chest tightened. He walked to the window and pressed his forehead against the cold glass. Outside, the storm hadn't let up since the burial. Snow covered the corrals. The road into town was gone. No doctor, no wet nurse, no help. Then he saw it, a faint light, far down the slope, a cabin. He remembered it now. A woman lived there, quiet, kept to herself. A widow, maybe. He had never spoken to her, never needed to. Ethan closed his eyes. He hadn't prayed since the day his wife died. Didn't know if anyone was listening. But his daughter whimpered behind him, and pride felt suddenly very small. "If anyone's there," he said to the dark. "I need help." 3 sharp knocks answered the prayer. Ethan froze. The sound came again. Calm, certain. He crossed the marble floor in long strides, pulled open the heavy door and stepped back as cold air rushed in. Snow blew across the threshold. A woman stood there, wrapped in a faded wool shawl. Snow dusted her dark hair. Her hands were bare, red from the cold, clasped tightly in front of her. "Mr. Cole," she said softly. Her voice was steady. That alone startled him. "I heard the baby crying last night," she continued, "on the wind." Ethan stared, unsure what to say. "I can help," she said, "if you'll allow it." His first instinct was refusal. He was not a man who accepted charity, not from neighbors, not from strangers. Then his daughter cried again. The sound cracked something open inside him. "How?" he asked, his voice rough. The woman lifted her eyes. Brown, tired, kind in a way that hurt to look at. "I lost my child last spring," she said. "My milk never stopped." Ethan's breath caught. He stepped aside without another word. She moved past him into the warmth, snow melting from her boots. She didn't look around at the wealth, didn't hesitate. She went straight to the cradle, as if drawn by instinct, older than thought. Ethan followed, every nerve screaming that this was wrong, that he should stop her, that he should ask questions. She lifted the baby with practiced gentleness and sat by the fire. She loosened her shawl and glanced up at him once. "Turn away," she said quietly. "If you need to." He did. Ethan faced the window, fists clenched, heart pounding. He heard the soft rustle of fabric. His daughter's cry broke off mid-sound. Silence followed. Not the terrible silence he feared. A living one. He turned back. The baby was feeding, small hands curled. Color already creeping into her cheeks. Ethan's knees nearly gave out. He grabbed the back of a chair and stood there, breathing hard as tears blurred his vision. The woman hummed, low, familiar. An old hymn his wife used to hum when she cooked. "You don't know me," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "I know grief," the woman replied. "That's enough." Minutes passed, or maybe more. When the baby finished, the woman held her until sleep came easy and deep. Then she placed her back in the cradle and wrapped her shawl tight again. "I'll come back tomorrow," she said. "Before dawn. She'll need it." Ethan found his voice. "Your name?" "Mary Sullivan." He nodded once. "I'm in your debt." She met his eyes. "It's not a debt. It's what we do when the world breaks us." Then she was gone. Ethan locked the door and sank into the chair by the fire. He stared at his sleeping daughter, her chest rising steady now. For the first time since the burial, the house didn't feel like a tomb. But as the fire popped and the wind howled outside, Ethan knew something else too. He had opened a door he could not close, and somewhere deep inside, he wasn't sure he wanted to. Mary returned before dawn. Ethan was already awake. He had not slept. Not really. Every sound from the nursery pulled him to his feet. Every breath his daughter took felt like a question the night might still change its mind about. He had coffee waiting. Strong, black. Cooling on the stove, Mary stepped inside quietly, snow clinging to the hem of her shawl. She nodded once when she saw the coffee, as if acknowledging a small courtesy between two wounded people. They didn't speak. She went straight to the cradle, lifted the baby, settled into the chair by the fire. Ethan stood in the hallway shadows, unsure where to put himself. He felt like a guest in his own house, like a man watching something sacred he didn't deserve to touch. Mary hummed again. The same tune. Slow, steady. Memories struck without warning. His wife laughing at their wedding, dust on her boots, flowers tangled in her hair. Her hand resting on her swollen belly as she stood in the garden she never finished planting. Then the midwife's voice, tight, afraid. "She's bleeding too much." Ethan squeezed his eyes shut. Mary's voice cut through the past. "She's strong," she said softly, meaning the baby. "She fights." Ethan swallowed. "Her name is Lillian." Mary nodded, as if committing it to heart. After the feeding, Mary handed the baby to him. Their fingers brushed. Ethan flinched at the contact, surprised by how much it affected him. He hadn't been touched like that since the grave was filled. Mary noticed, said nothing. "I'll stay," she said, adjusting her shawl. "Until the road's clear, if you'll have me." Ethan didn't hesitate this time. "She needs you." Mary's mouth curved into something close to a smile. "Then I'll stay." The days found a rhythm. Mary came before dawn. She left after dusk. Sometimes she stayed through the night when the baby struggled. She cooked simple meals that filled the house with smells Ethan had forgotten existed. Soup, bread, stew that warmed more than the body. Ethan chopped wood until his arms burned. He fixed a loose shutter on Mary's cabin. Hauled supplies she never asked for. Left them by her door without knocking. They spoke little. They didn't need to. They moved around each other carefully, like dancers learning the same song without stepping on toes. The baby began to gain weight. Color returned fully. Her cries grew louder, stronger, alive. Ethan watched Mary with his daughter and felt something twist inside him. Gratitude, relief, fear, something else he refused to name. Then the storm broke. The supply wagon arrived with the ranch hand, Caleb Moore. Snow caked his boots as he stepped into the kitchen and stopped short. His eyes went to Mary, to the baby asleep nearby. "Well," Caleb said slowly, "didn't expect to see that." Ethan signed the supply ledger without looking up. "That's Mary Sullivan." Caleb's gaze lingered. "Folks might talk." Ethan's jaw tightened. Let them. But the words stuck. By the end of the week he felt them, in the feed store, on the street. In the way conversations paused when he passed. In the way eyes followed him back to the ranch. A widow barely buried. A woman living under his roof. Mary noticed the change in him. The way he stopped meeting her eyes. The way his hands clenched when she handed him the baby. The space he put between them. One evening she packed her small bag. "I should go," she said quietly. Ethan looked up. "Why?" "I can come at night," she said, "when no one sees." "No," he said too fast. "Lillian needs you during the day." "And you need your standing," Mary replied gently. The formality stung. "Stay," Ethan said. "Please." Mary set the bag down, but something shifted between them, a wall where there had been none. That night, Ethan stood outside her door, listening as she sang his daughter to sleep. His chest ached with something dangerous. Not love. Not yet. But the beginning of it. Mary spoke first a few nights later. They sat by the fire, the baby sleeping. "I had a daughter," she said. "She was stillborn." Ethan looked up sharply. "I named her Rose," Mary continued. "Planted flowers so she'd have something beautiful." She stared into the flames. "My husband said it was my fault. That I worried too much." He left. Quote. Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "So am I," she said. "But nursing your baby, it feels like God gave me one more chance." Ethan exhaled shakily. "I don't know how to do this without my wife." "You do it one day at a time," Mary said, "like the rest of us." Quote. The knock came 3 days later. Hard, formal. Ethan opened the door to find Reverend Thomas Hale standing with 2 women from town. Their faces were set, judgment already decided. "We have concerns," the Reverend said. Mary appeared in the hallway, holding Lillian. Ethan felt the question in her eyes before she spoke it. "Will you defend me?" His mouth opened. Closed. "It's temporary," he said finally, "until I can make other arrangements." Mary went still. She handed him the baby. Her hands didn't linger this time. "I understand," she said. "I'll send my cousin. She's respectable." Mary walked past them and into the cold without looking back. Ethan stood there, holding his crying daughter, as the Reverend nodded in approval. The door closed, and something inside Ethan collapsed. The house grew quiet in the wrong way. Not the peaceful kind Mary had brought with her humming and steady footsteps. This was a hollow quiet, one that echoed too much, one that pressed in from the corners. Lillian cried often now. Not the sharp hunger cry, something smaller. Lost. Ethan paced the nursery at night, rocking her until his arms ached. She fed when the hired nurse arrived, on schedule and without warmth. The woman did her job well enough, then sat by the fire knitting, eyes distant, words few. Lillian slept, but not deeply. She startled at small sounds, woke too soon, reached for nothing. Ethan saw it all. He also saw himself in the mirror and didn't like the man staring back. 3 days passed like years. On the 4th morning, Ethan saddled his horse before dawn. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He didn't need to. His body knew. Mary's cabin stood quiet against the snow. Smoke rose thin from the chimney. He knocked once. Then again. The door opened just enough to show her face. "Mr. Cole," she said. The distance in her voice hurt worse than anger. "Please," Ethan said. "Lillian needs you." Mary's eyes softened, but she didn't step aside. "You made your choice." "I was afraid," he said. "I was wrong." "I know fear," Mary replied. "But I won't raise a child who learns fear matters more than love." The door closed gently. Final. Ethan rode away without looking back. He went to the cemetery. Snow drifted against the wooden marker bearing his wife's name. No grand stone yet. The ground was still too hard. He knelt, breath shaking. "I failed you," he whispered. "I failed her." The wind answered, cold, unforgiving. Then clarity struck, sharp as ice. His wife would have stood her ground, would have chosen mercy over approval, every time. Ethan rose. His decision settled heavy and right. Sunday came cold and bright. The church was full. Ethan walked in carrying his daughter, wrapped in lace that smelled faintly of lavender and memory. Whispers rippled through the pews. He didn't ask permission. He stood before them all. "You judged Mary Sullivan," he said. "You called her shameful." Lillian stirred in his arms. He held her close. "When my wife died, I had money and land. None of it saved my child. Mary did." A silence fell. "She gave her grief so my daughter could live. Anyone who scorns her scorns my family." An old woman stood, then another. Not all, but enough. Ethan left before the Reverend could speak. He rode straight to Mary's cabin. This time, when the door opened, he knelt. "I'm sorry," he said. "Come home." As family. Lillian reached for her. Mary's resolve broke. She took the baby and the crying stopped instantly. "Yes," she whispered. Spring came slow. Mary returned, not as a servant, not as charity, as family. The valley noticed. So did Ethan. Spring did not arrive all at once. It crept in quietly, like forgiveness. Snow thinned along the fence lines. Mud showed through in dark patches. The wind softened, though it still carried a bite at night. Inside the house, something else changed too. Mary moved back into the guest wing, carrying only one small bag. She did not ask where to sleep. Ethan showed her the room his wife had once planned to turn into a sewing space. Mary nodded, set her bag down, and opened the window just a crack. Fresh air mattered to her. The baby settled into a new rhythm almost immediately. Lillian slept longer, smiled sooner. Her cries turned into curious sounds, as if she were learning the shape of the world again. Ethan watched it happen with quiet awe. He also watched Mary. Not openly, not with hunger or intention, but with something heavier: respect, gratitude, the fragile beginnings of trust. They spoke more now, though still carefully. Mary folded laundry at the table while Ethan fixed a broken chair leg. Their shoulders brushed once. Both noticed. Neither mentioned it. The town came slowly. At first, it was just Mrs. Alder bringing bread. Then, a quilt left at the door with no note. An apology spoken too fast and too late at the feed store. Mary accepted each gesture with grace Ethan did not feel they deserved. "She owes them nothing," he said one evening, his voice tight. Mary rocked Lillian gently. "Grace isn't earned," she replied. "It's given." That word again, grace. It followed him into his dreams. The first real test came with the invitation, a formal letter. Sunday luncheon, the church women's circle. Ethan read it twice and set it down. "You don't have to go." Mary considered. "No," she said, "but I will." The room fell quiet. Sunday afternoon found them seated at a long table covered in white cloth. Conversations started, stopped, then resumed carefully. Eyes flicked toward Mary, then away. Lillian slept in Mary's arms, peaceful. When the hostess finally spoke, her voice trembled. "We were wrong." Mary met her gaze. "Yes," she said gently. "No bitterness, no triumph, just truth." After that, the walls softened. Weeks passed. Ethan built a small cabin near the ridge, closer to Mary's place than the mansion. 2 rooms, a stone hearth, windows facing east. He did not explain it while he worked. Mary did not ask. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ethan handed her a simple iron key. "It's yours," he said. "If you want it. Close enough to help, far enough to be free." Mary turned the key over in her palm. Her eyes filled. "I never wanted freedom from her," she said softly, looking at Lillian. "Only from shame." "You won't find that here," Ethan replied. They stood there, the baby between them, something unspoken settling into place. The town noticed the cabin. Whispers returned, but softer now, less sure. Ethan stopped caring. One night, after Lillian was put down, Mary spoke from the doorway. "You could have chosen easier." "I know. Why didn't you?" Ethan thought of his wife, of the grave, of the silence that nearly broke him. "Because I already chose fear once," he said. "I won't again." Mary studied him for a long moment, then nodded. That night, the baby slept through until morning. Ethan sat by the fire long after the house went still, feeling something unfamiliar. Peace. Not complete, not permanent, but real. And for the first time since the ground closed over his wife's grave, he allowed himself to believe that healing was not betrayal. It was survival. Summer arrived the way hope does, quietly, almost unnoticed at first. The grass along the lower fields turned green. Wildflowers crept up the hillsides in soft yellows and purples. The air no longer cut at the lungs. It wrapped instead. Warm, patient. Lillian grew stronger every day. She laughed now, a full, surprised sound that made Ethan stop whatever he was doing just to listen. She reached for Mary without thinking. Reached for him, too, her small fingers wrapping around his thumb with fierce certainty. Ethan learned the rhythm of fatherhood slowly, awkwardly. He learned how to warm bottles just right, how to rock without jostling, how to sit through long nights when sleep refused to come and grief slipped back in beside him. Mary never corrected him out loud. She showed him instead. A shift of the arm, a softer hum, a pause before setting the baby down. He watched. He learned. They spent more time together now, not because they planned it, because life required it. Mary tended a small garden near the cabin Ethan had built. Tomatoes, beans, herbs. The dirt stained her hands. She smiled more out there. Freer. "This is what your wife wanted," she said once, brushing soil from her palms. "I know," Ethan replied. The words didn't hurt the way they once had. The town adjusted. Some never apologized. Some never would. But most softened. Children waved. Shopkeepers nodded. The pastor avoided Ethan's eyes, then finally spoke one afternoon, voice subdued. "We misjudged." "Yes," Ethan said simply. That was enough. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ethan found Mary sitting on the porch steps, Lillian asleep against her chest. The baby's hair glowed copper in the fading light. "You should rest," he said. Mary smiled. "I will, in a minute." Ethan sat beside her. Their shoulders touched and stayed that way. "I've been thinking," Mary said, "about what comes next." His chest tightened. He didn't interrupt. "I won't always be needed like this," she continued. "She'll grow. She'll need less of me." Ethan looked out across the land. "I know." "And you," Mary said softly, "you'll find your way." He turned to her. "What about you?" Mary met his eyes. "I already did." The silence that followed was full, not heavy, not fragile, just honest. That night, Lillian woke, crying from a dream she didn't yet understand. Ethan reached the nursery first. He lifted her, held her close, whispered nonsense words until her breathing slowed. Mary watched from the doorway, unseen. Later, when the house was still, she spoke. "She's safe with you," Mary said. Ethan nodded. "Because of you." Mary shook her head. "Because you chose to be brave." The word settled deep. Brave. He hadn't felt like that man before. Not when he bowed to judgment. Not when he hid behind his name. Now he did. Weeks later, the baby took her first steps. Unsteady, laughing, falling into Mary's arms, then Ethan's. They both cried. Not loudly, just enough. That night, Ethan stood outside the cabin he'd built, watching light glow through the window. Mary moved inside, humming. Lillian's laughter floated out with the sound. He didn't step in, not yet. He understood now that love didn't rush. It waited. It chose its moment. And when it came, it would come honest. Ethan turned back toward the mansion, heart steady, no longer afraid of what the town might say. Because everything that mattered was already home. Autumn came with clear skies and long shadows. The valley turned gold. Leaves whispered along the fence lines. The air carried the scent of dry grass and wood smoke, a promise of winter waiting its turn. Lillian took her first real steps the same week the apples ripened. She wobbled across the porch. arms outstretched, laughter bubbling from her chest. Mary knelt, hands ready. Ethan stood just behind, holding his breath. When Lillian reached Mary and fell into her arms, she squealed with triumph. Ethan laughed. The sound surprised him. It had been a long time since laughter came without guilt. The town gathered soon after for the harvest fair. Ethan had not planned to attend. Crowds still made him wary, but Mary set Lillian's bonnet straight and said, "It's time." They walked in together, not as a statement, not as defiance, as family. Some people stared, some smiled. Most simply nodded, as if accepting a truth they had resisted for too long. An older rancher clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "You did right," he said quietly. Ethan nodded back. That was enough. As the sun dipped low, music drifted across the field. Couples danced. Children ran. Lillian slept against Ethan's chest, her small fist curled in his shirt. Mary stood beside him, shawl pulled close. "You look peaceful," she said. "I am," Ethan replied. "For the first time." Mary studied his face. "Your wife would be glad." Ethan's throat tightened, but the pain no longer cut. It rested there, familiar, part of him. "I hope so." That night, after Lillian was put to bed, Ethan stood at the window overlooking the valley. The lights from the small cabin glowed steady, warm. Mary joined him quietly. "I'm thinking of staying," she said. "Not because you need me, because I want to." Ethan turned to her fully. "I don't want you here out of duty." "I know," Mary said. "That's why I'm asking." Silence stretched between them, not awkward, expectant. "I don't know what the future looks like," Ethan said at last. "I won't promise what I can't give." Mary nodded. "Neither will I." They stood together, looking out at the land that had taken so much and given something back. In the weeks that followed, life settled into something steady. Mary moved into the cabin permanently, though the door between their homes never felt closed. Lillian learned words. Simple ones. Joyful ones. Ethan worked less. He learned to stop at sunset, to sit on the porch and watch the sky change color, to listen. The town stopped whispering. Winter returned gently that year. On the anniversary of his wife's passing, Ethan walked to the cemetery alone. Snow dusted the ground. The marker stood quiet. "I kept my promise," he said softly. "I learned to be brave." The wind stirred the trees, as if answering. When he returned home, light glowed in every window. Mary was inside, singing softly. Lillian's laugh followed. Ethan paused at the door, hand resting against the wood. This was not the life he planned. It was better. He stepped inside. Mary looked up. Their eyes met. No rush, no fear, just certainty. They did not name it. They did not need to. Love had arrived the way it always does when it's real. Quietly, honestly, without asking permission. Ethan lifted his daughter, kissed her hair, and held her close. A man once known only for his wealth had learned what his fortune never taught him, that sometimes the richest thing a person can do is accept help and choose love when fear offers an easier path. If you felt this tale in your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Archives of the Wild West, where every story rides through the dust, the danger, and the kind of love that never dies. See you in the next tale, partner.